Rangers fans, welcome to season 4 of Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast powered by Believe Network. I'm Andrew Chelney alongside Nick Zararis. On a happier note to start off, hope everyone was having a great holiday season. As a reminder, please stay safe and enjoy responsibly. On this episode, we'll get into the Rangers' continuous struggle to score much of anything, what steps would need to happen for that problem to start becoming addressed, and a whole lot more. Nick, I know you have a lot on your mind to start the show off.
So last Tuesday, I rambled for 50 straight minutes. I did an airing of grievances. I'm fed up with this hockey team. Why am I going to watch a team that can't score a goal against the Islanders? It would be one thing if we were talking about a good hockey team. And the Islanders are not bad, but the Islanders are a very bad defensive hockey team. They give up the 12th most scoring chances. They give up the 10th most shots against. They give up the 7th fewest goals against, but that's because Sorokin's great. They are 31st in expected goals against and 31st in high danger chances against. The Islanders are not a good defensive hockey team. I'm not even saying that Rangers needed to win on Saturday, but you need to be able to score one goal against a bad defensive hockey team the way the Islanders. Yeah, almost horseshoes and hand grenades. This is the National Hockey League. The Rangers are making this so much more difficult than it needs to be. They are 19th in scoring chances for. They are 31st in shots for per 60. They are 29th in goals for per 60. They are 28th in expected goals for per 60. And they are 18th in high danger chances for per 60 in the month of December. And yes, no Adam Fox, JT Miller injured and now missing games. I get it. There are plenty of teams that are missing key players. There are plenty of teams that can mitigate the loss of one or two guys. This team is hopeless. Anybody advocating for trades, trying to shake things up beyond call-ups, they are missing the boat here. This team does not deserve reinforcements. That's what the trade deadline is for. That is a ringing endorsement of your group that you were so good in the first 50 to 60 games of the season. You guys deserve more help. This team, if anything, deserves to have help taken away. This team should have pieces sold off of it as opposed to added on. Now, if you want to make an argument for perhaps a buy low or a hockey for hockey trade where if you do a 1-for-1, if you do Lafrenière for something, Schneider for something, whatever, I think that's a little bit different. But this team is not in a position to straight up be buying, and they shouldn't be. Under no circumstances, and nothing through the first 40 games. We're almost at the halfway point. One more game, we will be at the halfway point of the season. Nothing.
Well, they play tonight. I mean, we practically are at the halfway point.
After tonight, we will be at the halfway point, and nothing has shown you this team has the capacity to win three out of 5, 4 out of 7 to advance in a playoff series. Can they win every other game, be a 520 points percentage team, maybe sneak in as the last spot because the East is an atrocity? Sure, but that doesn't accomplish anything. That's the undercurrent of this conversation now. And I think what everybody's starting to come to terms with, okay, if we're the best worst team, what is that good for? Because that means they probably hold on to Panarin through the trade deadline and they extend him or they let him walk for nothing in the summer. That's not good for the long-term trajectory of the team. You still have another 4 years of JT Miller and Mika Zibanejad. Trocheck's down to 2, including next year and the year after, so that's a little more manageable. But where is the trajectory of this team? How do you not become the Canucks? How do you not become the Bruins? That's your goal right now if you are the Rangers. How do we not entirely fall off of this cliff? Because the Rangers have shown no indication to be willing to let it fall off the cliff. That's the other thing. If they wanted to embrace the tank and suck, that would be better than what they are doing right now. But they traded K'Andre Miller. They went out and got Gavrikov. They signed a bottom 6 of guys like Taylor Radish with veteran NHL experience because they expected to be competitive this year. They thought this group was going to be good enough to be in the mix, and nothing through 40 games has indicated they're anything beyond a middling hockey team.
No, this is exactly who they are. This is what we've been talking about for 3 months. This is who the Rangers are. And for some people, it's taken half of the season to come to terms with that. This is who the team is. They are a team that might be able to explode for a period like they did against Washington, right? They scored all those goals. Washington kind of fell apart there at the end, and the Rangers took advantage of that. They scored a bunch of goals, and the Rangers won. It was a great feel good story heading into the Christmas break, right? Oh, the Rangers scored 5 goals against a good Washington team. Okay, well maybe there's hope, and then they, of course, the first game out, get shut out by the New York Islanders in their first game after that break. And yeah, I mean, they looked pretty okay. Riddick had some, decent saves to keep that shutout. But, the first period, like the first 12 minutes of that game, the Rangers had 1 shot attempt or something ridiculous like that, and there's only so many times that Vincent Trocheck or whomstever could walk into the locker room after the game and talk to media and say, the other team had a better first period than we are. Like, we didn't show up in the first period. Okay. Well, I'm glad that the team understands that. I'm thrilled through the roof that the team understands that, hey, that's not good enough. I'm very happy about that. Okay. So then why does it happen every game? Why does it happen every other game? If you want to be generous about it, every other game or every third game, whatever you want to put it. Why is in every single game that the Rangers come out, they look flat, or there's a couple of times recently where they look great in the first period and they look flat in the second period? Why is there always a period in here and they just come out and they just don't care to play hard? It's such a strange set of circumstances for this team where it's the same group of guys that can go out there and score 5 against Washington, but then also just not even generate an attempted shot on goal in like 12 minutes against an Islanders team. It's, as you said, the trade deadline is supposed to be hey, you played well, here are reinforcements. For this team, the best course of method, it has to be to sell. Panarin is walking at the end of this year. If you don't get anything for him, that's I hate to say that, like, it's going to be disaster. You have to trade Panarin and get something, because this team is not going anywhere after game 82. Even if they make the playoffs, that's the whole point. Where, okay, let's say you keep Panarin as a deadline rental, as your own rental, and then you try to make that push and you keep adding players. Okay, what is the ceiling that comes with that? What players could you acquire at the deadline with frankly minimal resources that you have at your disposal to upgrade the roster that would increase the ceiling by so much that you can confidently say it's okay if Panarin walks because we have a good shot? Who are the players that you can acquire that would change the course of the way this season plays out? For the Rangers, there's so many little things that are adding up that I can't think of 1 or 2 people, players that are on the market. I mean, I could play, franchise mode and come up with names, but if we're being realistic here, there isn't 1 or 2 names that are currently available that stick out to me that go, if the Rangers just get this guy, everything changes. So therein lies the problem. At the deadline, the Rangers have to sell because there's no one out there that could change the trajectory of this team.
And to build off of that a little bit more, that's because the foundation of this team is not good enough. I don't want to hear anymore that they don't have finishing talent. They're not a good hockey team. Those are not congruous ideas. Stop saying they're playing well, but they can't finish. We are 41 games almost. By the time you're listening to this, it very well might be 41 games into the season. If you can't finish, you're not a very good player. What have we heard for 5 years about Alex Lafrenière? What did we hear for the 4 years Kakko was here? They don't score enough. They're not very good. So why do the veteran players, the Zibanejads, the Trochecks, the Panarins, the Millers, get off of, they just don't have the finishing talent, this group? They try really hard. That's great, man. I try really hard at my job too. But that's not the goal here. This is a team that is leveraged for this exact moment. Like we said before, they got older and more expensive, and they have some cap flexibility where if they were more competitive, we could seriously entertain maybe a Steven Stamkos or a Nazem Kadri and say, that's your third line center. You kick Laba out to the wing and you get more well-rounded. This team stinks. They can't score against the Islanders. This is a team
or Nashville.
This is a team that cannot score. And they have guys who have scored, who have 100-point seasons under their belts in Panarin and JT Miller. Zibanejad has been a point-per-game player a couple times. Trocheck, a point-per-game player once. This is a team that has fundamentally altered every aspect of how it plays. They have, for the season, reasonable underlying numbers because they have made a full-throated, concerted effort to try and play the way Mike Sullivan thinks they need to mitigate their weaknesses. They're not very fast. They're not very skilled. So we have to muck games up. We have to slow them down. We have to try and turn this into lower event hockey. And we need to try and win on the margins because we don't have the talent to pull away against most teams, even the bad teams. And in doing that, they have lost a lot of the dynamism. And I think some of it is some decision-making between guys like Panarin and Zibanejad when it comes to breakaways and what they choose to do on rush opportunities. I am tired of the Top Gun slamming on the brakes or pirouetting and hook curling as soon as you get in the zone. If you're in a one-on-one, take it to the net. If you're in a two-on-one, take it to the net. Don't slam on the brakes. Don't stop. Don't give the defenders an opportunity to get set up. The entire point and the entire reason rush offense is the most dangerous offense you can generate is because it has the most variance, because you have the defenders moving, you have the goalie moving, and you can move the puck left to right too. You have 3 to 4 different layers of variance within those given plays to create dangerous offense. And anytime you slam on the brakes at the half wall and you allow the defender to close in on you and let the goalie get square to the person who would receive the pass, you are defanging your offense. And this Rangers team does not create well off the rush. Their cycle game is middling because they don't have great foot speed and they're not very physical. And it's not practical. This is not the way good teams are constructed or play in 2025. You know, I jokingly said it a few weeks ago when somebody had tweeted something about the Panthers. Everybody wants to be the Florida Panthers. The Panthers are the only team that has Barkov, Kachuk, Reinhart, Bennett, Marchand, Luosterainen, Lindell. They are the only team that has the capacity to play a physical, grinded out, dump and chase game where they can be a 6.5% shooting percentage team at even strength and still win a majority of their games because they have the high-end skill to offset their weaknesses. The Rangers trying to imitate the way Florida plays with the guys they have is rendering the results it is because they do not have the talent to execute the way Florida does. They can get those lower quality shots to go in because Sam Reinhart can score 50 goals in a season, because Barkov can be a 100-point player, Kachuk can be a 100-point player, Verhaeghe can be a 30-goal guy, Marchand can be a point-per-game player. The Rangers do not have the guys to do it. And the worst part is, it's only going to get worse as these guys get older. As Zibanejad, Miller, Trocheck get into the second half of their 30s, those guys are going to continue to decline. And there is not help on the way, as we've discussed ad nauseum over the years. I think Noah Lab is fine. I think Will Cooley's fine. Those guys are third liners on Stanley Cup contenders. Those are not top 6 players. Nothing they have done to this point indicates they are play driving, impact players in a top 6 on a winning team. You can put up good stats on a bad team, that's fine, but that is very different from what the Rangers need out of their youth, and their youth isn't set up for that either. That's the other part of this too.
Well, speaking of youth, Alex Lafrenière scored his 100th goal. Congratulations to him in that 5-goal barrage against the Caps. He's finally. It took him 420 games to. He's still at 100 goals. He's got 220 points in 420 games, which is, like not bad. But you think of it this way: you zoom out for a second and you go, okay, if you're a first overall pick, and by the way, he was a consensus first overall pick. Everybody knew that he was going to go first overall to whoever won the draft that year. That was going to be the pick that team was going to make. It took you 6 seasons to score 100 goals. You're the first overall pick. And by the way, he was labeled as he was a shooter. It wasn't like, he was Pavel Datsyuk and his hands and his passing were the number one attribute. He was supposed to be an offensive dynamo that produced goals. You just scored 100 goals in over 400 games. That's number one overall pick. And I don't want to single him out too much, but you zoom out for a second and you go, okay, well, this was supposed to be the slam dunk pick for the Rangers. This was supposed to be the guy that transformed the offense in a positive direction, that was supposed to score 40 goals. You would think, right? Again, because of all the hype, you would think, okay, 35 goal season soon, 40 goal season, maybe, right? Like if he really lights it up, this could be somebody that changes the course of how the Rangers play hockey. Through 40 games this season, he's got 8 goals in his 6th season with the Rangers. And, there's still a runway for Lafrenière to get better and start producing goals. But man, it is becoming very difficult to be in his corner, really. And it's not all of his fault. I'm not saying that it is, and I'm not just saying that this is all Lafreniere's fault and everybody else is doing great. That's not what I'm saying here. Please listen to what I'm saying. But this was supposed to be the guy where, okay, even if somebody doesn't, even if Zibanejad doesn't have a great game, or Panarin or Trocheck or whoever, Lafrenière was supposed to be the dependable number one overall pick that could take over a game because he has the skill set to be able to do that. First overall picks should, by all accounts, have the ability to go, okay, wait, we're losing. Okay, hold on a second. Everybody just chill out. Let me take the puck and I'm going to change the course of this game. That is the point of everybody wanting that top pick, right? This is the game-breaking player that is incredibly rare throughout the league to have. Everybody wants that player to have on that roster. And for the Rangers, Lafrenière has shown bits and pieces of that, but it's the 6th season of him being here. He's got 8 goals. I haven't noticed him in like half of those games either, which is another problem. Like it'd be one thing if he was hitting like a post a game where you're thinking to yourself like, oh, he's got 8 goals, but like, I mean, my God, he should really have like 16 or 17 or whatever because he just keeps hitting posts, but not really. Like, yeah, he's got a couple of posts here and there, but it's a lot. Like a lot of his shifts, I just don't notice that he's on the ice. And I think that's the most condemning part about this is if you are Alexis Lafrenière, this is your 6th season in the NHL, and you are taking shifts where, for the most part, you're not noticeable. What are we doing here?
So what I would say as far as Lafrenière, and I do think it's a complicated conversation because when it comes to players living up to their potential, a lot of it's environmental. A lot of it comes down to what do they get in their first 2 or 3 years. And I think the fact that Lafreniere's junior season got shut down and he didn't play hockey for 9 months as an 18-year-old is a driving factor in this. I think the fact that he never really had a ton of runway in the early phases of his career when the Rangers weren't particularly good yet. I know that's really only the first season he's in the NHL, but he didn't play a ton. He didn't get a ton of runway. And I think so much of how those young guys ultimately turn out to be, especially the high-end ones, is the opportunities they get and when they get them. I think you look at the season that, say, someone like Trevor Zegras is having right now, where the Flyers don't really care how this season goes beyond the development of their young guys. Zegras is playing the most hockey of any season of his career. He's over a point per game, and he's got decent underlying numbers. He's playing matchup minutes, and you compare that to the Rangers right now, and I think we've been pretty adamant over the last, I would say going back to January of last season, that if the team isn't good, what do you have to lose by trying to figure out what these guys are? And when it comes to someone like Lafrenière, I think by the time you're 24, 25, you're more or less what you are. for every Brock Nelson and Chris Kreider, guys who break out at 29, 30, 31, because they find whatever was missing from their game to put them over the top, you're going to find 400 guys who peter out at 40 points a season, who are middle sixers, who on bad teams get onto a power play and they go from 40 points to 55 or 60 points. And I think some of the conversation about Lafrenière can be held to there. I think whenever you look at the underlying numbers, they've always been pretty solid at even strength. And then because he doesn't have those power play opportunities, or he doesn't have first power play opportunities, he doesn't have the access to those 10 to 15 extra points that most guys on a first power play get, that ultimately dictate, the trajectory of your career. If you don't get on a first power play in the early stages of your career, you have to wait until you're 26 or 7 and you get to unrestricted free agency. And then a team gives you a lot of money. So they're incentivized to put you on their first power play if they overpay you or pay you what your perceived market rate is. And then you put up those better counting stats in the second half of your career because a team has materially invested in you. And Lafrenière wasn't in a great situation. You remember, you had a left wing logjam where you had Kreider and Panarin ahead of him, and Lafrenière was not going to play ahead of either of those guys. So it was either third line left wing or he had to move to the opposite side. You have to learn the opposite side. That's something working against you. I think you look at the way the Rangers organization overall philosophically has approached development. When you have coaches and general managers who say this is not a developmental league, which is preposterous, you should always be trying to get better no matter what level you're playing at. That includes the professional ranks at the NHL level. I think and we'll talk about it a little bit later too, in regards to guys they've drafted under the Drury regime over the last 5 years. They don't take development particularly seriously. They expect these guys, especially the higher end ones, the ones they draft highly, to basically show up and be ready to go. And I think in part, and this is more anecdotal, I have to go and look at the numbers and how the percentages break out. I think that's part of the reason the Rangers like college hockey guys so much. I think that's part of the reason they like acquiring guys with NCAA experience, because that's a year or 2 or 3 of development in an overarching system within a certain style of play. And I think you look at the Rangers over the last 10 to 15 years, a lot of their best players have gone through the NCAA ranks and have extended developmental experience, not in their organization. You look at an Adam Fox, a Chris Kreider, a Derek Stepan, Ryan McDonough, K'Andre Miller, and that's just the first 5 guys that came to mind. Those are all relatively impactful to very good players who went through the college ranks 2 or 3 years there. In the case of some of those guys, a year or 2 in the AHL, and then they came along and they were ready to make an impact. I don't think the Rangers are particularly good at this, and I don't think that's really a hot take. I think, if I remember correctly, the last Ranger player before Chris Kreider drafted by the Rangers to be over 70 points in a season was Tony Amonte, and that was like 40 years ago at this point. They don't develop well. They don't take their development particularly seriously. And now everybody wants to throw their hands up and say, how did this happen? Why isn't he good? I think you look at the last 4 to 5 years, and then you look at the greater context of the last 20 to 25 years. This team doesn't develop talent well because they don't understand how to do it.
No, and that shouldn't be a hot take. And if you think it's a hot take, then I would love to hear the counter argument as to how that.
Every now and then I do. Every now and then I get somebody in my replies who will say, "But what about player X that they brought up?" And like, sure, Will Cooley looks like a decent NHL player. A lot of AHL time, got there. But for every guy like that, you have the Braden Schneiders, the K'Andre Millers, the Lafrenières, who peter out at 24 instead of getting better or taking the leap. And
or even worse, you have the guys like Kravtsov.
Yeah, who never make it at all. And I do think the other part of this, and I think this ties into something a little more overarching in terms of the organizational philosophy. I think the organization wholesale has accountability issues. Yes, the young guys need to take it upon themselves. We have been talking about Lafrenière not being the best of skaters for 4 years now, and he himself has never taken a real initiative to try and get better. It's hard to get better as a skater as an adult, but you can do it. You look at the most obvious glaring example is Braden Point. The Lightning saw an undersized guy who said, if we can fix his skating, this guy's going to be really good. And he's one of the most important players in that organization. Two of the best playoff runs of any player in the 2020 so far in 2020 and 2021. Lafrenière has never really taken that initiative. Andre Miller did not really take that initiative. And some of that comes to scouting. Do you sit down with these guys? Do you get a good feel for them as people? Do you think you can invest the time in them and they will return it back to you? Some of it is accountability at the NHL level. And I say that because we've been on this show bemoaning the lack of accountability when it comes to poor performance for guys like Zibanejad, in past years, guys like Trouba, Ryan Lindgren, Barclay Goodrow. For years, these guys are held to a different standard, and that sends a bad message to your younger players. I think you look at the situation where he had last year, where we have cited this over and over again. Kakko was right. He was not the worst player on the team through the first 3 months of the season, but he was the one who got healthy scratched because he was a sacrificial lamb in a way. But we can't healthy scratch Vincent Trocheck or Jacob Trouba or Mika Zibanejad. That would be a bad look. And that sends a bad message to your younger players that you held the veterans to different standards. We've talked about this for years with Panarin and his back checking and his defense, that he doesn't put forth a great defensive effort a lot of the time. What does that do to guys like Lafrenière, who had the best season of his career playing with Panarin, and says to himself, well, if he can do that, I can do that too. And that's not a good attitude to have. But if you are a tolerant workplace and you let that attitude permeate amongst your teammates, amongst your guys, it's only natural that guys are going to start to become complacent, because if no one's held accountable, it creates an environment of permissiveness, and you get things like guys who peter out at 24 or 25 because they don't feel invested. And that's the other thing to what you had said a minute ago. These guys never felt like this was their team. They never felt like, and that was the ideal outcome. You augment, and that was the pitch. The elevator pitch for going out and getting Fox, Trouba, and Panarin in the summer of 2018 into 2019 was, we are going to draft well over the next couple of years so that these guys will hold us over. And then the Lafrenière, the Kakkos, the Schneiders, the Andre Millers, the Kravtsov, the Hedels, the Elias Andersons, once those guys develop, they can take the reins from the Zibanejads, the Kreiders, the Panarins, the way it has for the Dallas Stars, the way it has for the Washington Capitals. And to your point, this is a team that drafted a ton of guys between 2017 and 2020 under the guise of this will be their team eventually. And then it never materialized. It has yet to happen. And now we're sitting here in 2025 hoping that Noah Laba's maybe a third-line center, hoping that Will Cooley maybe can be a second-line left winger. Braden Schneider is tapped out as a third-pair right defenseman, and they are stuck. There is no recourse out of this without getting something externally. There is nothing in the system that's a slam dunk. There is nothing in the system that says, okay, we might suck right now, but help is coming. You know, Washington, to their credit, has a great AHL operation. Hershey is always really competitive. They churn out pretty good developmental pieces, and they've turned the Protas brothers and Connor McMichael into impactful, notable NHL players who can take the reins from the Ovechkin, the John Carlson, the older cohort of the team. The Stars, same thing. That Sagan, Ben, Klingberg group that aged out, passed the team over to Hintz and Robertson and Heiskanen and Harley and Ottinger. The Rangers don't have that. The Rangers got a ton of third liners. They got a ton of third pair defensemen, which is good. You need those. And it's better if they're cheap as opposed to going out and getting them. But it's a lot harder to go out and get a star player than it is to find a sixth defenseman or a third line left wing.
I want to bring up a story that I heard this past Saturday because, you know, as you know, I work at SiriusXM and I produce the Saturday morning show with Coach Sam Mitchell. And he brought up this story where, you know, he coached or is coaching or you know, before coaching one of the top prospects in this upcoming NBA draft. And he was telling a story about how one of his teammates is always raving about Sam. And he, you know, and he wondered why that is. And I think he asked him or his family or one of those, I forget, you know, the details, but basically the teammate that is raving about Coach said, I really like the way Coach, you know, teaches us because the number 2 pick or the number 3 pick or the top guy gets coached just as hard, if not harder, than everybody else. With that, and that really resonated with me. The idea that everybody can see when the top players are getting preferential treatment. When the best guys on the team are either late or they make mistakes in practice or in games or whatever, and coaches will slide things under the rug because they're the best players on the team, but they will chew out, the eighth guy for doing the same exact thing. People notice that. It is an effect that can change or alter the course of an entire locker room if you let it get to that point. And that story this past Saturday really struck with me because it's almost an antithesis of what's going on with the Rangers, where there's been a lot of mistakes from guys in the top six, but because they're in the top six, they just never get accountability for it. I haven't heard like when Kreider got healthy scratched that one game last season, there was an uproar. How could you do this? Because he wasn't playing well. Your top players are supposed to play well. And if they're not, and if they're actively playing poorly for stretches upon stretches of time, making mistakes that, again, and Kakko was right. Like if Kakko made the same mistakes that Kreider would have made, yeah, he'd be up in the rafters for 2 months, just sitting up there watching the team play. But because the name on the back is different, all of a sudden it's excusable. That is another indicator of a poor locker room chemistry. Everybody on the team sees how the coaching staff treats everybody else. And if you're Capo Kakko last season and you're watching the top guys make mistakes, the same mistakes you are, maybe more mistakes or what have you, and you're the one getting scratched, yeah, I can 100% understand. Wait a second. But but everybody else is doing the same thing. Why am I the one getting blamed for this? Why am I getting punished for this? This is one of the fundamental reasons why last season broke apart the way that it did. And it's to a lesser extent still happening now, where these guys are making a lot of the same mistakes. They're not, generating enough offense. They're, like I said, against the Islanders, they generated one shot attempt in the first 12 minutes of that game. That's on the top six to stop that, to change that. And instead of that, the play continues to be the same, and you get the same quotes after the locker room of oh, we didn't start the game well, or they had more energy off the rip, or we didn't try hard enough. We're halfway through. We are halfway through the season, guys. What is it going to have to take for you to take those words and show it to me on the ice?
I think it's really something to build off of what you just said. It's not just that their effort is inconsistent, the way they play is inconsistent. They're not good enough. And I think it's really important we keep saying that over and over again, because anytime the Rangers have lost in the playoffs under Chris Drury, the consensus takeaway has always been, well, we weren't tough enough. We weren't physical enough. Tampa was more physical. They were grittier. Florida, grittier, more physical, as opposed to calling a spade and saying, we're not good enough. And nobody wants to admit they're not good enough. I get it. As a general manager, to come out and say we weren't good enough is an admission of defeat. You don't want to acknowledge defeat publicly. That doesn't make you look good to the public or your boss. But at the same time, you compare the rosters of those teams, the teams that lost to Tampa Bay and the Florida Panthers, and they're not good enough. They're not competitive enough. When Tampa Bay can throw a Yanni Gourde at you and you're throwing Gaudreau out there, Florida can throw an Anton Lundell out there and you're throwing a Barclay Gaudreau out there. When Florida can throw a reclamation project Nico Mikko at you and get better results than you got out of Trouba or Keandre Miller, that's not a good look for you. And that's the problem now. It's not just that they're inconsistent, they lack talent. They are fundamentally not a talented enough hockey team to win consistently in the NHL. And for all of the bluster about the effort, the lack of pride, like you said last week after one of their losses, they are not good enough. nobody talks about pride and intensity when teams are winning games. It's the same exact nonsense we were talking about 2 years ago with, well, they win so much with Rempe in the lineup. Well, Rempe's in the lineup now and it doesn't matter because they're not winning. It does not matter. It's the same exact principle. People only talk about things like intensity and pride when the team's not good enough, but we can't come out and say we're not good enough. That's where the Rangers are at right now. We have to talk about intensity, pride, grit, because we're not good enough. And if Trocheck can't come out and say, well, we're not a very talented team, Miller can't come out and say we're not a very good team, and Mike Sullivan's got to say, we're going to keep trying, we're going to stick to our defense, we know this works, we can win games playing like this. But the problem with this, and something else I wanted to talk about, we can tie it to what I wanted to talk about with Gavrikov, it's really hard to win being a defense-first team in the NHL now. Your margin for error is infinitesimal as a defense-first team because when you can't come back the way the Rangers can, I think there's something like 3-11 when the other team scores first this year. They can't mount multi-goal comebacks, and generally speaking, that's conducive to overall team success. Good teams, yeah, they're 4-15-4 this year when the other team scores first. It's really hard to score 2 straight goals, 3 straight goals.
By the way, that's 23 games.
Yeah.
Out of 40 that the Rangers get scored on first. I just want to highlight that. And also, by the way, and really quickly, I never want to hear somebody say the Rangers aren't physical enough. The Rangers are out hitting everybody every game this season. Like even the last game against Islanders, the Rangers had 24 hits, Islanders had 14. But they're not physical enough. But they're
not practically physical enough. They can't do anything with it. That's the thing. Yeah, and that's what we always talk about. Practical toughness. Exactly. Practical grit. There are use cases for that. When you can win board battles consistently, you can use your body to create leverage to win those 50-50 pucks. Yeah. But it doesn't matter if you're hitting a guy after the puck's already gone the way the Rangers do. It's great you want to finish your check. It sends a good message. You get a hit in on a guy. Maybe you shake him up a little bit. You send a message, momentum. All that stuff is good. It doesn't matter if the puck doesn't go in the net. You can hit anyone you want. You fight anyone you want. If you don't win the game, it does not matter. That's why we're not hearing anything about Matt Rempe right now, because they're not winning, so nobody cares about the guy who plays 7 minutes a game and doesn't fight anymore because the team told him not to because his hand is messed up. And speaking of what we were talking about before, Panarin's on pace for 80 points. Zibanejad's on pace for 61. Trocheck over a full season would be on pace for 63. He's going to finish with 40-something, 50-something if he gets a little hot. JT Miller is on pace for 51. He's probably going to finish with less than that depending on when he comes back. Those are your 4 most expensive, 4 most important forwards, and all of them are on pace for career worst years, not including like rookie seasons, not full seasons, but your 4 most important and expensive forwards are all declining, and you have to address what that means for your core identity as a team. They are already struggling right now. What's this group going to look like in 2 years when everybody's 2 years older? Is Panarin going to be here? Is Trocheck going to be here in 2 years, the last year of his deal? Is JT Miller going to fall off a cliff entirely and end up being like a Bryce Salvador captain where he hangs around forever because nobody can get rid of his contract, but he's a terrible player? Is Zibanejad going to continue to decline and end up being like a third-line center in terms of his production? Your 4 most prioritized players, your 4 most commonly used players are struggling mightily. And you had to do it this way. Could all of those guys have another 5 to 10 points if maybe they cheated a little defensively to create more offense? Probably, but it doesn't matter. The power play sucks too. All of these problems compound with each other. And there are a million things wrong with this team, but it all fundamentally comes back to the fact they do not have enough talent. Nobody wants to acknowledge they don't have enough talent. And we're going to go through another 40 games of, wow, they won tonight. Oh, they lost tonight. They won tonight. They lost tonight. And that's going to be the rest of the season. Unless somebody comes in with a rocket up their ass. If Miller comes back from this upper body injury and looks like the Miller of last year, who was a point per game player, okay, maybe there's a conversation to be had. If Panarin gets on a heater where he drops 10, 12 points in 5 or 6 games, okay, maybe. But you're banking on things that nothing to this point has shown you are particularly plausible. So that's why this feels so dire. That's why this feels so hopeless.
Yeah, again, this is the halfway point of the season. And the things that we talked about in the first week, we're still talking about it now because this is who they are. And it's sort of Gavrikov is having a solid season, and it doesn't matter. That was the biggest acquisition the Rangers had on July 1st was Vlad Gavrikov. And for what it's worth, it was a great contract. That the fear is that it would have been for a lot more money. Gavrikov came in at a discount essentially and has been a solid player for this team, especially with Fox out. And guess what? It has not mattered. Because no one on this team can generate offense, or if they can, they can't finish. There's no finishing talent on this team, and that's been the biggest problem. Is okay, well, when Adam Fox comes back, he's not playing tonight against Carolina, and neither is Miller. Apparently, Molly Walker talked to Mike Sullivan, and JT Miller is going to anticipate. He's going to anticipate JT Miller joining the team on this road trip. Whatever that means.
He'll be back for the Winter Classic. That would be my assumption.
That's probably what's going to happen. But even then, like, if he isn't good enough to play now, but he's good enough to play in 2 days, is he 100? Like, is he going to be the JT Miller that we expect him to be out in the Winter Classic, or what version of JT Miller are we going to see? But regardless, the biggest acquisition the Rangers had this past offseason was a defenseman, and he's been great. And it hasn't mattered. That's another indictment of the forward group. You solidify the defense. You objectively make it a lot better. Gavrikov is here. Will Borgen has been insane for some reason throughout, like, I would say 25 of the 40 games that the Rangers have played. He's been great. Out of thin air, he's been awesome. Carson Soucy has been less bad than he was last season, even though that giveaway against the Islanders and then also that shootout attempt, brother.
I mean, that's a polar bear in Arlington, Texas situation. Carson Soucy's not making breakaways.
I understand that, but that was not a great attempt. But yeah, that giveaway was really bad. But overall, right, Lindgren isn't on this team anymore. Trouba isn't on this team anymore. Robertson is fine. Schneider is okay. Morrow has been getting better with every game. Yeah, there's still some rookie mistakes that he's making, especially some of the giveaways that will iron out over time. The defensive core objectively isn't terrible. It's pretty serviceable. It's pretty okay, especially when Fox comes back. Right? Like, Mike Sullivan's making the right defensive decisions by sending Urho Vakanainen to the Sun and just not having him play because he cannot play top 6 minutes in the NHL level. So overall, the blue line has been great, but it has not changed the results of a lot of these games. Why? Because the Rangers can't score anything. They keep getting shut out. They go long stretches without generating an attempt at a shot on goal. It doesn't, like, you can have Lidstrom and whomstever Norris Trophy winners you want on that blue line. If you do not have forwards that are able to put the puck in the net, it almost doesn't matter. And that's hopefully a lesson that the Rangers can take out of this is if you don't have top end talent that can take over a game that in the forward lineup, then you can't win a game 0-0. That's just not how it goes.
And we've been talking about this for years now. It is really hard to win when your best players are your goalie and a number one defenseman. It's always been the consensus that the most impactful position is forward, and it slides on down. So on the year, the Rangers have outscored opponents 67-62 at even strength. Gavrikov has been outscored 27-25. 51% of the shot attempts, 48% of the shots on goal, 52% of the expected goals, 59% of the high danger chances, 7.51% shooting. With Fox, he's been lights out. 56% of the shot attempts, 53% of the shots on goal, 59% of the goals, 60% of the expected goals, 66% of the high danger chances. Fox without Gavrikov has still been really good. 66%, 68% shot attempts, 70% goal share, 67% expected goal share, 70% high danger chance. Gavrikov without Fox, so most of the last month, 44.5% of the shot attempts, 44% of the shots on goal, 36% goal share, 44% expected goal share, 52% high danger chance share, 6.7% on ice shooting percentage. And all of this is to say, Gavrikov is a consensus top 10 at worst defensive defenseman in the NHL. There are some people who would argue he is a top 5 defensive defenseman in the NHL. And that shows you how little that is worth in today's game when you can't get passable results with him. And that's an indictment of everything. This is your marquee addition. And this is exactly the same conversation we had about JT Miller last year. You went and outed a point per game player to your team, and it did nothing to change the results. You went out and added a consensus top 10, maybe top 5 defensive defenseman in the entire league to your team, and it doesn't matter. That's how inconsequential the additions have been in spite of the grander problems. And that's how serious the bigger problems are. You went and out and added an elite player. JT Miller last year was a point per game. He was an elite player a year removed from a 100-point season. Gavrikov is one of the best defensive defensemen in the world. It does not matter. That's how bad everything else is. You went out and added 2 net positives, and you subtracted active negatives in Gaudreau, in Trouba, and it does not matter. That's how bad this team is.
And adding 1 or 2 players at the deadline isn't going to change that either. You need a complete rehaul of not just the people that are on the ice, but also a rehaul of how you think a roster should look like. And therein lies the problem of, okay, well, this is Drury's pinnacle, essentially. This is because he's been here for how many? It's been a long time.
Spring 21.
Yeah, so it's been a while. He's had the ample time to construct the roster that he's wanted, and this is the result of that. It's not like he was, it's not like this is his first season on the team. This is a result of 5 years of tinkering to this is how I want the team to look like. This is the active result of his vision for the roster and the makeup and how they're supposed to play, et cetera, et cetera. And you have a team that can defend, but can't generate enough finishing talent for that to even matter. You have the best goalie on the planet. You have the best defenseman on the planet. And yet you are getting shut out what feels like every other game. And so it doesn't matter. And, it's really difficult. It's tough to come out here on the podcast every week and say it doesn't matter, or, this team isn't great or whatever. But we are here to tell you the truth. This is the truth of the team. They do not have the finishing talent for them to be a threat come playoff time. And I've said this over the course of the past few weeks. I tweeted this the other day. I'll say it again. Scoring in the regular season is easier than scoring in the playoffs. Scoring in some random December game against Islanders should come a lot easier to you than game 3 of whatever series you're playing in. If you cannot feasibly score at a consistent pace, basis, I should say, in December or November or whatever, how can anybody trust you to consistently score in the playoffs? This is the easy part, in theory, right? Obviously, it's not easy to score, whatever, et cetera. But in theory, you understand what I'm saying. Games 1 through 82 should be easier to score goals in than games 83 and beyond. And yet when you are showing to everybody that you cannot score in quote unquote the easy part of the season, what are you going to do when the hard part starts? That's the question that Drury has to ask himself. Mike Sullivan has to ask himself. Dolan, I guess, has to ask himself. Everybody has to understand that fundamentally. You cannot score now. What's going to happen in 4 months?
The Rangers couldn't score in the playoffs when they were good in the regular season, let alone now. They were struggling to hit 3 a game in 24 and 22. That's the peril of doing the defense first team. So one other thing I wanted to touch on today. You compare the bottom 6 of this team. So Cooley's on pace for 21 goals. Laba's on pace for 10. Radish is on pace for 15. Othman has 0. He probably won't be on pace for 0 the whole year, but God knows. Carrick's on pace for 2. Rempe's on pace for 5. Granted, Rempe and Radish, those are scaled out for 82 games. Obviously, those guys have missed time or been healthy scratches at points, so they're probably not getting there. You compare that to the team 2 years ago. Blake Wheeler had 9 goals in 54 games. Kakko had 13 in 61. Veazey had 13 in 80. Gaudreau only 4. Cooley had 13 in 81 games. Brodzinski had 6 in 57. And then they went and added Jack Roslovic and Alex Wenberg and pushed all of those guys down a couple spots. You think about the fact that their bottom 6 this year is on pace for 53 goals among 6 guys. And you compare that to where teams have been historically in their offensive production. And then you think about the fact that top 6 is all on pace for down years too. The math is not here. It could not be more straight up or direct to anybody with a calculator, a pen, and a piece of paper. They are not scoring enough, and they are failing to take advantage of what's a terrible conference, which is the other part of this that sucks. Because if they had managed last year a little bit better, or the fallout from 2024 a little bit better, they could be in a great position right now to take advantage of the fact that East is a mess. The fact that nobody looks good right now should be extremely encouraging. That the Rangers are still in a window of contention. They went out and shored up their defense. They got a good coach. And again, it does not matter. This is what makes it so frustrating. This is what makes it suck so bad, is it did not need to be such a precipitous fall off from where they were 2 years ago. They did not manage the fallout of 2024 well, and they are going to continue to deal with the repercussions of that prolonged failure over an extended period of time to develop any younger players, to offload older aging players until it's already too late. This group is depressing, they're demoralizing, and they're uninteresting. How is it talking about the team more interesting than watching them play hockey? That's how boring they are as a team to watch. Can they score 3 goals tonight? Can they score 2 goals tonight?
Can they score 1? That'd be nice. That'd be a nice change of pace. Well, they scored half a goal against the Islanders until they didn't with that Will Cooley off the post. And it's funny because, that was the pinnacle of of that shot that almost went in the net. Wait, that's the high point of the offense? A shot off the crossbar? Man, it's I hate being this doom and gloom. It's not fun, by the way. And if you're still here, we appreciate you listening, to the whole episode. It's not fun being down. It's not fun being negative about what's going on. We are negative because we're honest. This is the reality of the situation. You listen to Nick and I blabber for 52 minutes now, because you want to understand what's fundamentally wrong right now with the New York Rangers. And we're here to tell you that there's so many problems especially with the forward group, that there aren't any hot fixes. You can't just go in and drop one player and then all of a sudden everything's fixed. This goes much deeper than that. And now it's a question of, okay, well, the Rangers are in sort of tied, I guess, for a playoff spot currently, because the East is so bad, even though they've played more games than anybody else in the league, which, lowers their chances of making the playoffs. And a website like Hockey Stats essentially is counting this team out. The chances of the Rangers making the playoffs according to their algorithm is down in the teens. It's very low. So this is who they are. And unless something unexpected or drastic or something else happens, you've read half the book. You have an understanding of how this is going to go. There shouldn't be any big surprises at this point, because if there were big surprises, you already would have seen them before you got to the halfway point of the book. There's nothing there. And this is what it's going to be.
So if you go over to FanDuel has the Rangers at minus 230 to miss the playoffs. They are telling you that almost 2.5 to 1, the Rangers shouldn't make the playoffs. Their over-under is 89.5 points. If you were to make the playoffs with 89 points, that would be the lowest of any team in this format, other than, I believe, the 2016 Minnesota Wild, who made it with 88 points. This Rangers team would make the playoffs by sheer dumb luck, this is not a very well-constructed team. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about, because I pulled the numbers, the Rangers have drafted 30 players under Chris Drury since 2021. 5 of those guys have played at least one game for the Rangers at the NHL level. One of them, Victor Mancini, is not with the organization anymore, so we won't count him. Brennan Othman, 0 goals in 31 career games. Noah Laba, 5 goals in 40 career games. Gabe Perreault, 1 goal in 12 career games. And then Yaroslav Shamler, 0 goals in 6 games. In 5 drafts, 30 picks, the Rangers have gotten 6 goals and 90-something games played out of 5 drafts. I'm not even saying good players. I'm just saying guys who play at the NHL level. In 5 years, they have gotten 125 games and 8 goals. That is abysmal drafting and development. And I don't want to hear, oh, well, they've got all these bottom 6 guys. That's great, man. I like Brett Berard. I don't mind Othman. I think Perreault will be fine. None of it matters. None of those guys is shifting the direction of this franchise. And until people start to accept that, we are going to stay as Sisyphus rolling the ball up the hill. This team is not going anywhere. This team has no direction. This team has no vision. Great. You have Morrow. You have EJ Emery. You keep talking up Drew Fortescue because he played hockey with Chris Drury's son. All that stuff is great. None of those guys is changing the direction of this team wholesale until they address the fact that Miller, Zibanejad, Panarin, and Trocheck are declining players in their early to mid-30s, and they start to prioritize getting younger, faster, and more explosive. We are going to continue to watch the world go around, and this team's going to continue to get worse over time, not better.
One must imagine Sisyphus happy. That's all.
I mean,
that's what I have to say about that.
But this gets to a deeper philosophical question. But at the same time, this team sucks. I'm so beyond caring. Like, one of my Islander friend texted in the group chat with a few of us. He's like, "You excited for the game tonight?" And I was like, "I'll be honest with you. I forgot there was a game tonight because I don't care. The games matter so little. Until we address the general manager, the owner, and half of the roster, the games themselves don't matter all that much. They might win some, they might lose some. Great. It doesn't matter until we address the root causes of the organizational problems. It's not just a lack of talent. It's not just a lack of accountability. It's not just a lack of direction in future. All of that combined gives you this hopeless amalgamation of older veterans, unproven young guys. And look, I don't give Mike Sullivan a lot of flack for this. This is not his fault. There's only so much the guy can do. This team stinks. I'm done caring about the night to night of how this team performs until they change the GM, until they start to get rid of these overpriced, older, declining players. It's hard for me to give a lot of a crap about how the individual games go, because even if they make the playoffs, they're going to get smoked in the first round.
That's the trajectory of this team, where you either make the playoffs and get dumpstered because you refuse to score goals, or maybe there's like 3 games in there that the Rangers look okay, but then the rest of it is like, okay, wait, they generated 1 shot attempt in the first 12 minutes, and then you hear half the roster go, wait, oh, they just came out and we didn't have the effort in that first, or I don't know what happened in that second, but we just came out flat. It's like, if I had a nickel for every time I heard that, I'd have a lot of nickels, which is a problem. I don't want a lot of nickels. This is who they are, and this is who they continue. Like, it's like that joke where you go to a doctor and you go, "Doctor, it hurts if I touch this, or if I do this," and the doctor goes, "Okay, well then don't do that." It's funny, but it doesn't address the issue. The Rangers right now are literally like, okay, it's the doctor. It's like, then just don't do that. Instead of addressing what the issue is. That's the thought process. So just don't do that.
I'm out of metaphors. You could do Sisyphus. You could do the guy who's waiting for the river card, playing Texas Hold'em and hoping that 5th card is the card he needs. You could do the guy who's got $300,000 of credit card debt but keeps playing on FanDuel. There are a million things you could talk about as far as metaphors for this group, and no one seems to want to talk about it. Every story is they lack finishing talent. They're not trying hard enough, as opposed to the team is bad. You should say that. Anytime anyone asks you, how are the Rangers doing? Are the Rangers good this year? No, they're bad. And until that mindset permeates amongst not just the terminally online person who cares too much, but the average fan, the Facebook commenter, the athletic commenter, the average anonymous Twitter user, we cannot make any progress. People need to understand this team is hopeless and directionless. And it doesn't matter when Miller comes back, when Fox comes back. At best, they are a first-round exit. That will do it for this week's edition of Liberty Blue. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in this week. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts or over on YouTube. Andrew and I will talk to you guys next week.
Later.